External Affairs. In June 2018, he was appointed as member to the Consultative Committee for the Ministry of Railways. Later, in 2018 December, he was appointed as member of Committee of Rules. Well, Shri Muraleedharan ji officially took charge as Minister of State for External Affairs and Minister of State for Parliamentary Affairs on 31st May 2019. And now, can I please request Honorable Chief Guest Shri Muraleedharan ji to kindly come up on the podium and say a few words. Let's please welcome with a big round of applause.
Dear Ambassador Anil Naik, President of the Millennial India International Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture, His Excellency Alam Sese Woldrum-Merriam, Dean of Diplomatic Corps, Ambassadors, High Commissioners and participating diplomats from Central and West Africa, Sri Sevla Naik Mule, Additional Secretary, Central and West Africa, Ministry of External Affairs, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Namaskaram to all of you. I am delighted to join this August gathering of Business Conference on Central and West Africa, organized by the Millennial India International Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture. It's interesting to see a range of topics that will be discussed in this conference, from financial partnerships and infrastructure transformation to fostering value chains in agriculture and food processing sectors. I am confident that this conference would contribute in generating a momentum among business community of India and Central and West African countries to boost trade and investments for mutual benefit. Friends, India and Africa have long-standing historic trade and economic linkages, which goes back to millennia. During the last 10 years, there has been an unprecedented engagement with the continent, with more than 40 high-level visits from India and more than 100 high-level visits from Africa. India believes in development partnership with Africa based on their needs and the priorities of their people. This was spelled out by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji during his address at the Ugandan Parliament in 2018. Being a trusted partner of Africa in their journey of socio-economic development, India has extended concessional loans of over $12.5 billion. Under these concessional loans, we have completed 197 projects. 65 projects are currently under execution and 81 projects are in the planning stage. Our grant assistance to Africa stands at $700 billion. These development projects in various sectors such as drinking water schemes, irrigation, rural solar electrification, power plants, transmission lines, cement, sugar and textile factories, technology parks, railway infrastructure, etc. have generated local employment and changed the life of many people in Africa. During the pandemic, India continued its engagement with Africa. To support our friends in Africa, India provided medical assistance worth more than $5 million to more than 32 African countries. Since January 2021, till date, India has supplied 41.5 million doses of made in India COVID vaccine to 42 African countries. This was in line with our Prime Minister's vision of One Earth, One Health approach and our civilizational belief of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is, the world is one family. We are now engaging Indian vaccine manufacturers to explore joint manufacturing facilities for COVID and other vaccines in African countries. The importance of Human resources cannot be overstated. We are committed to enhance capacity building and skill development among African youth. In this context, we announced 50,000 scholarships to the African youth during the 3rd India-Africa Forum Summit, out of which more than 42,000 scholarship slots have already been utilized. It's a matter of pride for us that several high-ranking leaders, ministers, officials from Africa have studied in Indian universities. Apart from this, a number of students and officials from Africa have been trained under the ITEC program. India has partnered with African countries to promote digital transformation through setting up of IT centers, Science and Technology Park and Entrepreneur Development Center, etc. I am aware that there is ample scope in this sphere of technology, and with our emphasis on trust and transparency, that makes India and Africa natural partners. During my visit to over 35 countries in Africa, I found that Africa is one region that India has a lot of potential for collaboration. For example, Kenya, Uganda, Zimbabwe, Rwanda all wanted our businesses to come and cultivate crops for local consumption and exports to other countries. As the climate is mostly arid, millets hold a great promise. Another promising area is food processing. Recently, I was in Uganda for the G77. I have found excellent fruits. When I asked about food processing, they said they do not have enough mechanism for the same. So I feel that there is ample scope in this area where Indian and Ugandan enterprises could collaborate. So businesses who are interested in these areas could definitely explore the options and opportunities available. Also, there is enough appetite for our digital public infrastructure. That is the UPI. Africa always wonders how India does it in such a scale and with massive success. Apart from G2G, Indian businesses could explore this area for more collaboration. I also found copper gold mining as promising areas, including in countries like Botswana. Algeria, for instance, holds the largest phosphate reserves, and Indian companies could benefit on this with a huge demand for phosphatic fertilizers in India. Similarly, cooperation in fisheries. Africa is 9 times the size geographically of India. The coastline definitely also will be much longer than what India's coastline is. So fisheries, India has definitely made a lot of progress during the last years. We have been designing and implementing various schemes for improving the fisheries sector, for the welfare of the fishermen, and developing ports and port infrastructure also. So the other day I had met the Minister of Somalia also on the sidelines of G77, where he was mentioning to me that fisheries is a sector and the coastline is a sector where Indian enterprises and entrepreneurs could definitely try to find what are the opportunities where we can collaborate. Cooperation in renewable energy, particularly in solar, like countries in Eritrea and Djibouti, also could be considered. In the field of artificial intelligence, relevant startups in India could explore in countries in South Africa, Nigeria, Morocco, and other large countries. If I go to the Central and West African countries in particular, I would say mining in DRC, agricultural production in Gambia, both agriculture practices, machinery, cultivation, all these things could be thought of. I mentioned about food processing, IT and AI solutions. including government and government departments. India has created a digital infrastructure in the parliament's functioning also. Indian parliament has now become digital. And we are now collaborating with state legislatures also and bringing all the state legislatures along with the parliament on a single platform. So this is another option that the various countries in Africa should definitely explore. Education, I mentioned already, we have been having students coming from Africa to Indian universities, and Indian universities also have now improved their facilities also, because some of the universities initially, perhaps the hostel facilities, other facilities that are required for international students. Now the Indian universities who are interested in having students, international students, they have improved upon those facilities also. So there could be universities who can set up their campuses in African countries. Now I was recently in Tanzania, and the first IIT outside India has been set up there in Zanzibar, yes, Zanzibar. IIT Chennai has set up the first IIT outside India. The IIT Delhi is setting up an IIT campus or a separate IIT in Abu Dhabi, and it's also on the verge of starting its operations in a full-fledged way. So Indian institutions, Indian educational institutions and universities, they could definitely look for options, and those countries of Africa who would like to invite Indian universities to set up campuses in their countries in African continent, they could also think of this. Renewable energy, especially in Senegal, Gambia, Cote d'Ivoire, these are also areas, both wind energy also, other than solar. So like that, if we look at sector-wise, various options available, all these sectors are there, which India and Africa can collaborate and work to the mutual benefit of both the countries, I guess. India is keen to share its experiences and know-how to help Africa in its energy transition through rapid deployment of clean energy technologies. As I mentioned, in the renewable energy sector, India has now taken a lead in bringing together international coalitions through the International Solar Alliance, which provides a dedicated platform for cooperation among various stakeholders in the governments and private sectors to reduce carbon footprint. On the trade and economic front, India's bilateral trade with Africa has reached over 100 billion in 22-23. And there definitely is, we compared to the earlier years, we have progress, but there is still further opportunities to explore and more areas and improve upon this bilateral trade that is at present there. Through the duty-free tariff preference scheme that extends duty-free accesses to over 98% of India's total tariff lines, India opened its market to African countries, and so far 33 African nations are entitled to get benefit from this scheme. I am sure that this is also an area that could be explored upon. Friends, India consistently acts on its commitments, particularly in supporting our African partners. During our G20 presidency last year, we facilitated the welcoming of the African Union as a permanent member of the G20. It's a great win for Africa and for the India-Africa relationship. Throughout the presidency of G20, India championed the voice of the Global South. By hosting the Voice of the Global South Summit twice, India heard directly from over 120 countries of the Global South on the current global challenges. We articulated their voices, their concerns and priorities in the G20 discourse. These priorities of the Global South were reflected in the outcomes of our G20 presidency, be it on addressing the challenges related to sustainable development, financing for development, reform of the international financial architecture, addressing debt vulnerabilities, or deploying digital public infrastructure. Friends, only a week ago, as I mentioned, I was in Kampala representing India at the 3rd South Summit of G77. It was truly encouraging to witness the favorable reception of India and its initiatives aimed at bolstering the Global South. We persist in our efforts to ensure that our concerns are acknowledged and addressed on the global platform. In conclusion, I wish MIICCIA for a successful business conference. All the best to all of you. Thank you for the attention.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful address. And now can I please invite on the podium Ambassador of Eritrea and Dean of Diplomatic Corps, His Excellency Mr. Alan Sihai. Can we have a big round of applause, everyone?